Tuesday, 2:30, awesemo.com golf show. Same as always, myself, Ben Razza, here with Fantasy Golf Man, Tim Frank. And we have, this is a special day for Tim. Sanderson Farms in the spotlight, not an alternate event. This is their moment. Are you excited that we have to play this?
Oh, you have to. Yeah, I'm very excited that we have to play this. It's been in the shadow of the WGC China, I think it was, for 4 or 5 years. So this is like an opposite field event, opposite of the WGC. So nobody paid attention to this event. So I'm glad it's finally brought to the forefront where everyone can see what a really top-notch tournament this is. So very excited for the Sanderson Farms.
It's going to be something, and we're going to get into it. But before we do, I do want to say that our sponsor, Fantasydraft, is the only place where you can play rake-free fantasy in the business. They've partnered up with Hooters to bring one of the largest rake-free contests in the history of daily fantasy. So if you haven't signed up and you want to sign up, use the promo code AWESEMO. You get a week trial and your first $1,000 in rake-free entries. Void where prohibited. Got to be 18 or older, but go check that out. They have a golf format that does help when you can't get 6 of 6 through. We're going to dive into that because, man, right off the bat, and it didn't even feel like carnage, but we saw the immediate impact of the new cut rule. 6 of 6 was extremely low last week for the Greenbrier.
Yep, big fan. Like I said, big fan of the new cut rule. So my 5 of 6 was a lot stronger last week than it was in the past. But yeah, it was rough. I thought I had Straka. It looked like he did enough to make it through. And then just watching the PM wave, they did some good scoring on Friday. And yeah, he just couldn't hang on. And that T65, like you said, it didn't seem like a ton of carnage. But yeah, at the end, it was just, a lot of guys missing the cut. Neiman won. We kind of, I don't want to say we saw that coming, but he felt like he was trending towards a win. Last week seemed like a great spot for him to pick that win up. He's just been playing so consistent. And he struck it well last week. And then the putter, that's just what you need. He putted great, and the ball striking was also good, and that's what you get. He kind of ran away with it. So good for Joaquin, the Chilean amateur, former Chilean amateur.
It's that's what swing season seems to be about. It's some of these guys that, we know they can play. It's only a matter of time, and they kind of break through. I know Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, guys like that were on the list of guys. Now Hovland isn't here. He's at Wentworth. But we're going to get into that. So good for Neiman. But this is interesting because, Sanderson Farm, it's certainly not a course that I'm familiar with because I haven't played in the last couple of years. Naturally, I've been focused on the WGC. So we're in Jackson, Mississippi, and we're at the Country Club of Jackson, par 72. But what did you see when you kind of looked into this course?
Yeah, so it's 7,400 yard par 72. So, pretty long. Champ won here last year, but prior to that, I don't know. It seems like some shorter hitters have done well. 2018, we saw Ryan Armour, Cody Gribble, Peter Malnati, Nick Taylor. That's the list of winners. So really not a lot of bombers besides Champ, who just was putting unbelievable last year during the fall series. And that I don't have the strokes gain number from that event, but I remember
9.
Yeah. So yeah, if you get 9 strokes putting, really throw like course fit out the window because you're probably going to win or contend if you don't do something egregious with the ball striking. But yeah, for a longer course, the fair share of shorter hitters. I mean, you look at 2016, it was Malnati, McGirt, and David Toms. You look at 2015, Nick Taylor, Jason Bone, Boo Weekley. So, I mean, the short hitters have a chance here, so definitely not bombs away. Kind of like last week, not picking a side one way or the other. I think we're just going to play good players and not really get too much into course fit for me. Should be low scoring, 21 under, 19 under, 20 under. That was the winning score the last 3 years. So a lot of birdies, but yeah, in a bad field, I just hate trying to really play course fit because it's so tough to find plays in general. I don't really want to pigeonhole myself one way or the other based on like distance or accuracy or some other stat.
Especially, for me, and you can get some info, but and you've brought this point up before on the show, and I just want to echo it. We think we know what these guys are, in terms of the newcomers, like, oh, this guy, he's a great putter and he struggles with this. But do we really know, they're really young, they're going to develop. And I know looking back at some of the guys, Neiman stands out. Sometimes the narrative changes on the fly of what they are. So we need to be careful of being like, I'm going to disregard this guy that I've seen twice because I know that he can't compete on a par 72. And it's like, because of the sample size is what are we really talking about?
Yeah, really the only thing that I could look at and make a definitive point would be to look at web.com tour stats at driving distance and driving accuracy and figure out whether the guy's a bomber or not.
Yeah,
That's really about the only two things you can take away from if you're just looking at stats from the web.com tour. And yeah, like we're not going to take one event last week and say, oh, this guy's really good at long approaches and he's terrible around the green. I mean, yeah, it's one event. You need a long sample to get a real feel for what type of player all these newcomers are.
for sure. So this course, the way I kind of looked at it, and I like this, it is kind of straight up. You're going to get guys who can lay back. These par fives it's not a ton of eagles on this course looking historically, but you should birdie them. They're gettable, but the penalty, from what I've seen, you can be aggressive if you want to pull driver. You can definitely hit these greens out of the rough. Now, there's always a limit on every course, but even we saw a champ, he shortened everything, hit it to the middle of the green, and then when you make every putt, pretty easy formula. So sadly, this is kind of a putting competition. The scores are going to be low. It's Bermuda, but telling someone's going to gain a boatload of strokes putting. We have some guys who are more likely to do that, but at the end of the day, most of that is just dumb luck.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, look at Neiman last week. I mean, we've been waiting for him to have a really good putting performance for quite some time, and it's really hard to predict when that's going to happen. I don't get really too much into putting splits. I think with Bermuda, I just focus on a lot of the guys who grew up and basically lived their whole life in the South SEC country. And there's a lot of guys in the field this week, born and raised in, SEC country. I mean, generally those guys do well or do better on Bermuda than other surfaces, but I try not to get too carried away in putting splits.
Same. But I do, there is something to that. Yeah. I mean, you see those guys. Lucas Glover is one of the premier. We can kind of jump into it. He's a Southern guy and he's played here a bunch. Naturally, you want to keep in mind that the field has been god awful. He should be making the cut every time he comes here because relative to who he's playing against, he's better than them. But we kick it off with the champ from last week. Neiman leads off the pricing. We've got Sneds, Sungjae Im, Glover, Benny on. I'm going to put Scotty Scheffler in this conversation, even though, he's in the high nines on DraftKings and he's a little, on Fantasydraft, he's the fourth most expensive. So he's a little priced up. What do you think? I mean, there's not a ton of win equity across the board. Are you going to stick with Neiman, just start the swing season back to back?
I think Neiman is a safe play. Obviously, the great ball striking has extended all the way back to the middle of last season. But 11 threes just seems too expensive. I think if you have a lot of value guys that you like and you want to play Neiman, I would go for it because I think he's a safe play. I'm not worried about him kind of falling off after the win last week. I mean, this guy, I believe he's known he's going to win on tour for quite some time. I don't think it's not like he's struggled for years and years and finally got over the hump. But I just think he's too expensive. I mean, 11-3, you really need a top performance out of him at that price tag. And I just don't, it's hard to bank on that. And also I don't see a lot of value guys that I like to make Neiman work. So I don't think I'll be going there. Snedeker ended the season strongly. Obviously, we always talk about he has great win equity, but he's just way too inconsistent for me at 10-7. He's a guy that I like to play at 8K in a better field, but I mean, at 10-7, he's kind of all over the board. We know if he's playing well, yeah, he could lap this field because he's beaten much better fields than this year after year. But at 10-7, I'd like some sort of consistency, and it's just hard to get that from him. He's kind of all over the board. I like Scheffler the best at 9,900. I think I like the savings. I don't think there's a ton of value this week. He struck it amazing last week, led the field in ball striking, 11.6. He gained 8 strokes on approach. He finished T7. He ended the Korn Ferry Tour 7th, 11th, and 1st. He looks like, kind of one of the next studs. So I like him the best at 9,900.
So I'm going to throw Lucas Glover for me. I think that he's played here a bunch. We mentioned the Southern ties. He's a great ball striker. Another guy that I don't love paying up for, he's usually like a back end safe ball striker at like 7K in a really strong field. But I do think that, he's been a little better with the putter in Bermuda. Say what you want about it, but he should be used to it if nothing else. Benny on, the problem with him is, can he make enough 10 to 15 footers in a field like this? We know he's a great scrambler. And even though the putting's been better, the ball striking actually hasn't been up to what I would say are Benyon standards. So it's a little tough to peg him. Sun Im is always a wild card. I think his stats, I mean, it's all over the map. He's been doing it with the putting lately. And then we have Scotty Scheffler, who, so did you happen to look at his strokes gained from this event last year?
No, I didn't.
So last year, Scotty Scheffler was one of his first events, on tour. He got in. He gained 10.6 strokes tee to green, and he lost 9.5 strokes putting, and he came in 45th. So
right up my alley.
It's one of the most extreme. It's the Cam Champ gained 18 more strokes putting. That'll do it. Naturally, that stood out to me when I was looking at this. He was fantastic last week at the Greenbrier, just couldn't putt, as you mentioned. Another just clinic tee to green. So this is a guy that I know everybody is kind of on him and is saying he's going to win in the swing season. He's going to win immediately. I'm not sure, that's the case, even though on a field like this, I don't mind backing him. And it feels kind of foolish to go against the grain because he's a fantastic player. He's just going to be really popular. That's the one drawback.
Yeah, he is. I just like more of a balanced build this week, I guess. It's so hard. It's a bad field. And once you get below 7K, it's really dicey and just everybody seems overpriced. I don't know. Scheffler seems more appropriately priced, I would say, rather than, man, he seems like $1,500 too expensive, kind of like Snedeker and Im maybe feel. Lucas Glover. Glover's a good play, but I don't know. That seems so boring. That's like the 5 condom play this week is Lucas
right
Glover.
Up my alley. There it is. Team Jazzraz over here. These
pair him with Bill Haas and you're great.
Yeah, talk about a correlated stack. These fields, the pricing to me feels as inefficient as it's going to get because we just don't know. We're going to look back and some of these guys from the low 6s and 7s are going to be mid-range plays in stronger fields, and some of these guys were going to be, can you believe that in the swing season they were 10K? But we have a body of work, certainly on Sneds and Glover. I mean, we know what kind of players they are. We know who they are. The other guys, we have a decent idea, but they are much younger. The question for me is just going down. It gets immediately to players that it's very debatable where they should fall. You have guys like Cam Smith, Brian Harmon, Grillo, Vaughn Taylor and his vaunted course history, JT Poston, Corey Connors, your boy. What do you make? Because, a popular build last week was taking, several of that next tier at 9K on DraftKings type range, about 15, 14 on Fantasy Draft and trying to pair up 2 or 3 of those guys.
What the hell did Cam Smith do to get priced 9,800?
He must have an in at some of the sites because he really, I don't know what to make of him. He's on the President's Cup team. I was talking with Pat Mayo about that yesterday. Very shady.
Well, that just shows you how terrible the International President's Club or
times are tough.
President's Cup team is. This range, honestly, more than the 10K range, seems like guys are some egregiously overpriced. Like I said, I don't see why Cameron Smith would be 9,800. Connors, we love his ball striking, but 9,600, that's just crazy. I think you're paying a lot for a decent end of the season plus that T2 last year. That just seems too expensive for me. I'm going back to Grillo. I'm just want to be punished again. But at 9,400, not that far off of where we would see him in a regular season field, maybe a weaker event like Colonial. We pay 8,600, 8,800 for Grillo at places like Colonial, places like RBC. Stronger fields than this, not great fields, but he seems more appropriately priced at 9,400. You just have to pray that we get an okay putting performance out of him. Last year at the end of the year, the ball striking, it was phenomenal all year. He had some really, really bad putting performances in the last few events of the season, but the ball striking was just top-notch week in and week out. If you get just average putting from him, you'll be fine. If you get good putting from him, I think he can contend for a win. But 9,400 seems like a good price for him in this field.
You like Grillo over Corey Connors?
Yes.
Wow. I'm stunned about that. I just knowing, Corey Connors is another guy who's fits that mold, and talk about impressed. I was really impressed late in the year at how he kind of started to round into a more, unlike Grillo, who, that guy, I mean, it's just unbelievable how many wasted performances. Corey Conners was starting to capitalize a little with his great ball striking by holding it together on the greens.
I'm trying to figure out, because Corey Conners really was inconsistent for most of the year, about 3/4 of the year. And then at the end, I don't know if he figured something out and it clicked, or he just had a run of decent events and he's still the inconsistent player that he was. I don't know. I mean, I guess you do make a good point. Conners is really like a better version of Grillo for $200 more.
Knowing you, I know that's your boy on a serious note.
We'll play both of them.
There we go. Just pair them up. So I have a guy in this range, and I did mention his name, but we haven't dug in. I think that Brian Harman is in a really good spot. He was third last week at Greenbrier. The putting wasn't there. The ball striking really was good. And even during this stretch, it hasn't been great. But the guy, 4 top 10s in his last 8 tournaments. Now, there's been some miscuts in there and some bad finishes, but the boom-bust nature with him is kind of working. He's hitting fairways, beyond consistently. He's gaining off the tee. We know that Brian Harman is a good putter. Bermuda split is just fine for him. I feel like at 9,700, he's not going to be popular. I don't mind being a little against the grain and going to him.
Yeah, I'm with you. The ball striking was very good last week. Like you said, some really good performances, a little bit inconsistent, but that'll keep the ownership away. I agree with you. Harman and Sneds, would that be like a correlated pair? I don't know. They kind of feel similar somewhat.
Yeah, they both do stupid shit, but they can really putt when they get going. I am looking for some of that, because you are going to need some of those even if it's in spurts, you're going to need to rattle off streaks where you're hitting it to 12 feet and you're making them, a lot of them. This is that type of tournament. Even on the par fives, you're going to have shots that are around the green. You're going to have to scramble and make some of those to stay afloat. Now, Vaughn Taylor, he's in the other bucket with the uninteresting plays. I'm not paying 9,300. I think every week we pick one. He's the course tax that you're paying for some really good history in the past.
I mean, he has decent history, 26th, 10th, 20th, and 20th, but that's not like, for 9,300 Vaughn Taylor, I would expect like 3 top 10s here. And has Vaughn Taylor ever been above 8K anywhere? I feel like I've never seen him above 8K, and then all of a sudden he's 9,300. And
yeah, it's a brave new world. What can I say?
Maybe that's what's keeping me off of what kept me off of Corey Conners in the first run is like Grillo felt like he was near a price range where he's been before, and Conners just felt way more expensive. But that really doesn't really matter too much, does it?
No, what I'll say about that is, I'm not saying it's the case, but there's a chance that Corey Conners is actually just really, really good. And when we look back, he's going to be underpriced here. Grillo, I think we know who he is.
Terrible,
just he can't putt, and that's what it is. Corey Conners showed signs late last year of maybe he's not in certainly the tier that I imagined he was. So that's where I'm willing to bank on that price, because we just don't know. And when you don't know something that in a way is good, you can embrace it. It just means there's more variance. Look to Fratelli, no real, I think that's fine, but I'm not really into it. Russell Henley, Austin Cook. Anything else before I kind of rattle off the next pair of names?
I really like Austin Cook. I feel like he's maybe a little bit too expensive. I like him as a bet at 50-1. He struck it really well last week, gained 4.3 with the ball striking. He was T14. Had a bad season last year, but at the end, I don't know, it seemed like he found something. You look at the finishes, T72, not good. T4, obviously very good. T67, that doesn't really blow your doors off, but the ball striking seemed to kind of found something at the very end. Positive ball striking, even in those 2 kind of bad finishes where he was T72 and T67, and then really good ball striking where he was T4. So, now we've had a run of 4 events with positive ball striking. He's another guy, a South Carolina guy, born and raised South Carolina, went to Clemson, prefers Bermuda. I like him here. I don't know, 9K, maybe a little bit too expensive on DK, but I really like him as a bet. Former winner of the RSM in Georgia. So yeah, I like him. I don't know if I'll get to him on DK, but definitely like him as a bet at 50-1.
It's wide open, as you said, but I have another guy that we're going to get to shortly that Chad is talking about. But as we work down, Denny McCarthy, who resurrected himself after a horrible Thursday, Siwoo, Party Marty, the champ, no pun intended, the winner, Aaron Wise, and then Wyndham Clark. So I think I just tipped my hand with Aaron Wise. No surprise that I really love him this week. What do you think of this kind of upper? It's basically the whole 8K range. Do you have any feel, or is it a dead range for you?
The upper 8K, I'm probably with you. I hate everybody besides Wise. Ball striking was really good to end last year. Rattled off probably, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 events right at the end of the year where he was positive ball striking. A lot of it off the tee, but that's his game. 8,500 seems like a good price. He seems as good of a player as a lot of the guys in the mid nines, so it seems like you're actually getting pretty decent value on him. He's the only one I would get to in this range. Wyndham Clark, I don't know. People love him. I'd never like Wyndham Clark.
Yeah, you're not. So Wyndham Clark is just when you look at the stats, is kind of I don't want to say an anomaly, but he's really good off the tee and he's got an amazing short game. But his irons are Bo Hostler level weak, which is just, it doesn't make any sense. Really tough to back a guy like that. He does, Spieth is the poster boy for getting it done in unconventional ways. I guess it's effective. I mean, he's made 7 straight cuts. He's got a handful of top 20s. I still have a tough time clicking his name. I mean, Aaron Wise to me is just talent-wise, he's one of the best players in this field, and he's upper mid-level price range. I don't get it.
Yeah, $1,000 cheaper than a guy like JT Poston, who I know you like Poston kind of long term, but I mean, I think there's no question that Wise is a better talent.
He made the cut in all 4 majors. Wise. I mean, he can play. It wasn't the best season, but we've seen this. I see a little. I know Wells Fargo is it's a much tougher event, and Quail Hollow is a tougher course, but I see a little crossover, and he's handled that before. It's just a guy that I don't really understand the price. I'm not going to try to pretend that I know what Siwoo is going to do on a given week. It's just pretty random. His irons, I guess, are shaping up a little better lately, but I'm kind of with you. It's a somewhat dead range overall. I'm not going to Cameron Champ, obviously.
Yeah, I don't mind Nick Taylor at 8,300. Gained 3.4 with the ball striking last week. Has a good course history here. 3 top 30s, and then he won here at the inaugural edition of this event. And then going back to last year, the last few events of last season, a couple missed cuts, but the ball striking was really good. At least almost 2.9 ball striking in 5 his last 6 starts. So, I mean, even in the missed cuts, the ball striking was decent. And he was good last week, so I don't mind him at 8,300. Don't love him, but, decent play. This is a tough range.
It is. I mean, you get to, on both sides, you've got guys like, Nick Taylor, 14,500, Kyle Stanley, 14,500, Luke List, same price. And on DraftKings, same bucket of players, Brunson Burgoon. But is it me or does Kyle Stanley? I mean, I think long term you would agree he's better than the rest of these guys, but do you feel real here? Him and Streelman.
He feels like last week's Chappell.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, I guess we can put the show on pause and just talk about Chappell for 2 seconds. I mean, what was that? Just absurd. I thought I kind of avoided him. I felt like a genius, and then he does that, and then he just goes back to doing nothing.
Yeah, he did nothing for the 3 rounds, and then what did he make? 9 birdies in a row? 10 something?
9
ridiculous.
In a row.
Yeah,
it was shot like 55. This is stupid.
And then he gained, and I mean, obviously when you shoot 59, you're going to gain a lot of strokes putting. Gaining 5.5 with the putter in 1 round, that's never happening again, obviously. But good for him. I mean, the overall finish, if you look at the numbers, nothing spectacular, but I think the 59 proves that he's probably not dead. So
we can confirm Kevin Chappell is alive and well. But going back to kind of where we're at in the price range, and this is where we get to the mid-range, and we're already down to, flyers in the sense that you're not going to find when we're talking about the top 65 in ties, you're not going to convince me that you have guys that are just, oh, well, I'm going to take this guy for safety. There is no safety. Some guys are more risky than others, but it is dicey right here. You've got, Ryan Armour, Sebastian Munoz, who played really well, Sam Burns, who's back from the ankle. He did not make the cut last week. Matt Jones, Grayson Murray, Charlie Hoffman, Bill Haas. What say you if you had to? Because you're going to probably have to take someone from this range.
Zach Johnson. I just made the best team in my head. Lucas Glover, Grillo, Zach Johnson, and Bill Haas. I mean, just lock it in.
And then just self-exclude before you pick the other two. just do yourself a favor.
And just count the pars as they roll in.
Or balance it out with Grayson on the other side. Just get the yang.
Let's see. Let's start 7,600 Matt Jones.
Okay.
Missed 3 cuts here. So he's 0 for 3 here. I really could care less. I actually kind of like that. It's probably going to keep keeping the price down, might keep some of the ownership down. I could really give a crap about course history. He was really good last week. Gained 8.7 with the ball striking. He finished T10. Then you go back to last year. Didn't play a ton at the end of the year. But he was 30th at the Northern Trust, where he gained 3.2 with the ball striking. Missed the cut at the Wyndham, pretty much even ball striking, not bad. And then he was T4 at Barbasol, where he gained 6 strokes with the ball striking. So 3 of his last 4 starts. I mean, we're spanning back to quite a while ago, but 3 of his last 4 starts, really good ball striking, really good finishes. And I think 7,600 is a good price for him, coming off a really good event last week where he was T10 and struck it great. And then Grayson Murray at 7,600. He played very well at the end of the Corn Ferry season, 7th, 11th, 23rd. He finished T36 last week, not great, but he was decent again with the ball striking, gained 3.9, most of that off the tee. But like Wise, that's kind of his game. Gains a lot of strokes off the tee, not a lot on approach. But yeah, he was 8th here a couple years back. He's a North Carolina guy. You would think that he would prefer Bermuda, growing up in SEC country. So yeah, I like Matt Jones, Grayson Murray at 7,600 in this range.
For Matt Jones, I love. My article will be posted on the site. Check that out. I have a betting preview as well. Matt Jones in both of them. The only guy I really like the spot for him. It's someone, he had a good stretch early last year. Then he kind of regressed a bit, but he showed up at Greenbrier. Fantastic ball striking. I think it's an actual positive that he's 0 for 3 here. And I say that in the sense, so if this was, take Bridgestone or something like that, where the course is, we know what you need. If you don't have the skill set and you've missed 3 cuts, it's like, well, you're probably going to miss 10 cuts if you play here each year. I look at what Sanderson Farms, I think, demands. Matt Jones has those skills. It's not like he's missing something in his game that's causing him to struggle here. So I don't mind it. The price, it's the anti-course tax. Like, he's undervalued because of that. Ownership should be undervalued because of that. And this is a guy, like I said, he was 10th last week. I have 7,500 is more than appealing. It's really a good spot to attack. So 7,600, close enough. Grayson, chat pointed out, you mentioned him already. I'll jump on with you guys. No, he's a talented guy. With the withdrawals seem to be in the past. I think he's healthy. Corn Ferry into the first start of the year. It does feel like a pretty good buy low spot for a guy like Grayson. So there's some plays here you can really attack. And the question I always bring with this is, how much worse, if any, are these guys from the guys we were just talking about, Nick Taylor and the gang?
Yeah, none. They're none worse.
It's
Vaughn Taylor. He's the poster boy. I mean, Vaughn Taylor could be at 6,800. I don't think anybody would bat an eye this week. I mean,
seriously, no, he would be like the low owned chalk, but it wouldn't be anything crazy. Do you have any opinion on Charlie Hoffman? Because the name sticks out, but you don't know how many times I tried to play him late in the season, and
my opinion is that he's terrible.
He cannot gain with the putter. It's impossible.
I just haven't really even thought much about Charlie Hoffman at all. I didn't even know he was in this field. Now I see him there. Yeah, I mean, theoretically at 7,500, you could see him at 10K under different circumstances, right up there with guys like Lucas Glover. But, he's been so bad. And I'll be honest, I haven't really looked at it. I mean, if it's all the putter,
It is, but it's months of negative strokes gained putting. I'm not even joking. Like 8-10 straight
That's
events.
still not a big enough sample size. You need at least 1,000 events to really for it to normalize.
It's
so.
true. Good point. Good point. God, it's tough, but I think even Chad is pointing out that Charlie Hubman's a dangerous game. So if I make enough teams, could I use them? Probably, but I think the guys we outlined, Matt Jones, Grayson Murray, dare I say, as we work down a little, Roberto Castro, anybody? He's got the course history, but that's
He's
about
got
all.
the course history, but he also lost 4 strokes on approach last week, which is really not good. And
It's certainly not.
I mean, I don't know. He's one of those guys that he's going to hit every fairway. He can get hot with the irons, but he can just never put it together. At least he hasn't in a long time. And it just feels like almost like a poor man's Grillo, where even a good performance out of him gets you like a T35 or something. I don't know. I'm not in love with it. I love Castro.
I know you do. That's why I brought him up. So I'll say this. I'm not in love with it. He is making cuts. And this is why I got to him just in any capacity. I did comp this with Wells Fargo, and he's had 2 massive showings there. Now, they were a long time ago, but he's had some history there, and I don't know exactly what it is of why that could translate, but he's had some history here too. So I will look at it. Now, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't massively concerned that he gained like 5 strokes with the short game to come in 57th last week. That's really bad. But there's not as much as we work down. The guys I'm about to mention are ahead of him, chat, just to clarify. Doc Redman, right back to Sepp Straka, Cameron Tringali. Those guys are in the lower 7K range, and I think they make much safer plays than a guy like Castro.
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, Tringali pretty much break even with the ball striking. He finished T36. But yeah, just going back a long way, the approach game has been so solid with him. 7,300 in this field seems good. I've been riding him a lot. Nothing great, but, decent. I really love Doc Redman. You kind of made fun of me last week when I mentioned him. I think he was 7K. He finished T24, but the ball striking was phenomenal.
I played him because of you, so props to you.
Three strokes on approach, 3 strokes off the tee. Gaining 6 strokes with the ball striking, that's really good. And I mean, that's kind of what we've seen out of him. He's been inconsistent, hasn't made a ton of starts on tour, but he's had some pretty top-notch ball striking performances in limited starts. And I just don't think the price, really, he only went up $200. The field's worse. He played well last week, and he has some amateur pedigree. I mean, the guy was a really good amateur. I don't think he's as, highly touted as some of these other guys, but really good amateur out of Clemson, so I like him a lot. Straka, I mean, you know what you're going to get with Straka. You're going to get ball striking, and the putting in the short game are going to be the weakness. And, he played decent last week. Would have made the cut under the old rules, but he was one of those guys right on the number that got cut. But, yeah, I don't mind Straka. I don't know if I'll get to him this week because there's a lot of guys in this mid to low 7 range I like better.
So, not to add one more, but Chad is needling me about, we got to mention Hollywood Hoagie, runner-up last week. He gained across the board. 8, almost 9 strokes tee to green, and gained a couple with the putter. I'll just say this, and I'll pass it to you. I rarely get to him because his scrambling is so bad that even in Birdie Fest, I feel like it's just such a weak link of the game. But his irons are fantastic. His long irons are really good. Any interest? He's in the same price range as what we just discussed.
No. I kind of have a steadfast rule of not playing guys that just randomly finish like 2nd or 3rd the week before, just almost basing a lot on that. Guys that just kind of, I mean, I know he played well in the Korn Ferry finals. He played decent, but I mean, we've seen Tom Hoagie for quite some time. I'm not sure he's that good. I just feel like, oh, wow, we caught him on a random week where he finished 2nd. Same thing with Harris English. All of a sudden, out of the blue, the guy finishes 2nd or 3rd. People start playing him. But we've seen a span of, 40 events where he just hasn't been that good. So I generally don't play guys who just, kind of catch lightning in a bottle one week, and then we're going to just jump on. I mean, if you played him last week, that was the time to play him. This is kind of like we saw Varner at the end of last year. Like, don't hop on these guys after the big big finish. I mean, I don't know.
That's known as the Kelly Craft rule, which
Kelly
is
Craig, yes.
it's known as the Kelly
I
Craft.
love it.
Yeah, because Kelly Craft every like 6 months comes in sixth, and you're like, oh, this is it. And then he misses cuts for months on end, and then he'll do it again. So if you were on Tom Hoagie last week, A, I'd like you to message me and explain how you got there, because I never would have done that. And B, that was the time. I'm probably not going to chase it because, as you indicated, we have a large sample size that shows Tom Hoagie pops occasionally, and then he has months on end where his best finish is 40th. So I'm really not going to go there. I will gladly go to Doc Redman, who, when we look back, could be one of the more underpriced players. What do you make? This is another really interesting name, and then we can get into the real cheapies, and then eventually we'll get out of here. Robbie Shelton has ties to Mississippi. Obviously very impressive last week, 7,200 on DraftKings. What's there really to say? It's a guy that I think some people were on last week, 13,200 on Fantasydraft, so more than reasonable there. Any interest in chasing on him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's chasing because, again, yeah, really similar to Redmond, another, good amateur. So he's not coming out of nowhere. Seems underpriced at 7,200. Ball striking was really good, 6.7 with the ball striking, like you mentioned. Local Southern ties. Yeah, I like him. I mean, if I'm making a few lineups, I don't know if I'll get there. If you're MMEing, I think you definitely should get there because the price is good, the upside is good. Just seems like there's a handful of guys who aren't that much worse than a guy like Scotty Scheffler. Just kind of different circumstances, but I think could be as good as him or close. And I think the pricing discrepancy is pretty high when you look at guys like Redmond and Shelton at 7,200 and Scheffler all the way at 9,900, who I do like, but I mean, these guys at 7,200 aren't that far off from Scheffler, in my opinion, based on amateur pedigree. I should say that Scheffler's, we've seen a little bit more out of him, especially last week. But yeah, I mean, coming into this year, I don't think the three of those guys are all that much different.
No. And again, time will tell. I think we all know that Scotty Scheffler is probably going to be around for a long time. He's a damn good player, but some of these guys, it's just, say there's 8 of them down here, a couple are probably going to be around for a long time, and the other ones maybe not so much, because there are other names, like Harry Higgs, Joseph Bramlett, who was one of the few things that I got right last week. I had a couple sprinkles of him, and he did play really well. So there are names down here, but I'm kind of with you. I don't think it's chasing with some of these dudes that we've seen a little body of work, and they consistently performed on the Corn Ferry. It wasn't like they Tom Lewis did and just won an event, and now it's like, oh, they're on the tour. That's kind of a red flag. Not to rip on Tom Lewis. He's in Wentworth this week. No Peter Uihlein love, right?
I'm not even sure he's good, to be honest with you.
Not sure. I think it's confirmed that he might not be good, unfortunately. I'm a big Peter
I
Uihlein
love
guy.
that guy. He needs to go back to the European Tour, start playing the terrible events like the True Thailand Open and, the
Joburg Open.
Joburg. What are the events in India? Like the Hero Open and stuff like that. I honestly think he should be like a Scott Henn type, to be honest with you. Play like those terrible European Tour events, maybe get into some WGCs and some of the bigger European Tour events. I honestly feels like that's a better route because he felt like a better golfer 4 years ago when those were the events he was playing.
It's true. All right. Well, we're going to get to the 6K range in a hot second. I do want to just say really quickly, if you haven't signed up for Awesemo Plus and you're interested in doing it, we're running all sorts of packages from weekly. We got yearly. We got all sorts of things. You can use the promo code JazzRaz. You get 50% off your first month. We'd love to have you part. It's not just golf. We've got all sorts of things. I'm doing college football, a lot of it. So if you like to gamble on Saturdays, come on by there. Plus the DFS side, NFL, we've got shows every day, huge team. And then we've got baseball and basketball certainly in the pictures. So we'd love to have you. Also, if you can hit the like button, all the things that I love to say during the show. It's much appreciated, chat, for sticking with us during the Sanderson Farms black period of the event season. But man, I mean, I was playing around with some builds and I was forced to kind of go into the 6K range, even though I didn't want to. What do you think? Is it Hank Lebioda season? Is there other names? I have one guy down here that kind of, I don't want to say stands out, that I feel pretty good. I'm interested to see if you say his name.
I love the pronunciations on some of these. Lebiota. I just wanted to mention at flat 7, and I'm not touting this guy, but I just think it's interesting. Harry Higgs at 7K. So last week he was 7,200 in a better field, and he finished T19. He gained 4.4 with the ball striking, and now he's cheaper. That makes no sense at all. I mean, we mentioned a lot of guys we like in the 7K range. I don't know if I'll get to him, but seems like a slight misprice because he finished the Corn Ferry season really strong, a lot of high finishes, and he played well last week. He struck it well last week, and now he's cheaper in a worse field. So that seems strange to me.
No,
I'm not sure why that is. Yeah.
Landry's there too. I know we're throwing out a bunch of names, but this is a range that I'm going to hit pretty hard. I think it's very viable. And as you're about to find out, chat, when we get into the low range where we're at, I don't have much to say because I think it's really, really, God, there's not a lot, not down here.
Adam Long at 6,800.
I knew you were going to say him. He couldn't putt last week. That was it.
I mean, 8.7 ball striking that had to be like a top 3 performance, I would say. He finished T14. I mean, we saw it out of him. He won an event last year, and it wasn't like he was terrible the rest of the year. I mean, he wasn't great, but I mean, he played in some big events coming off of that win. I mean, he played in WGCs. He played pretty decent, 6,800 in this field coming off of that performance last week. And I mean, we saw him beat, but what event did he win last year?
Who?
Long.
Oh yeah, he won something. It was something.
Career Builder?
He won the one that's the Desert Classic.
Desert, yeah. Well, it used to be called the Career Builder.
Yeah, it's the one, the rotational.
Yeah. So I mean, not a great field, but yeah, like
better than this.
Light years better than this event. So yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty obvious one at 6,800. You mentioned Laboida. You know, hasn't shown as much as Adam Long. Obviously, never won, but he struck it really well last week as well. Gained 2.6 on approach. He was T36. I don't mind him, but Long seems kind of like the play in this range to me.
I got a guy. It's a real keep this, extreme dark horse.
All right.
You're not gonna like it because his problem is not putting; it's ball striking. It's Brian Stewart, who is not playing well, but he's doing kind of what he does. He has pretty murky results, and then he pops, a 4th at Valero, a 5th at Rocket Mortgage, 18th at Valspar. And the thing that stuck out in 2019, and it's a good sample, it's probably 25 type, maybe a little more events. It's got 6 events where he gained more than 5 strokes putting. So when he gets it going, and Bermuda is certainly his preferred surface, he really can go low with the putter. And I do think at Sanderson Farms, you're going to have those opportunities. Now his deficiency is off the tee. Maybe that can be mitigated here. It's not a really demanding course with the driver. So I'm just kind of banking. He's my one guy that the stats aren't going to line up because he needs to gain 6-7 strokes putting, but he's shown on Bermuda particularly, he can get really hot. And when he does, he can pay off certainly a cheap price tag.
I hate it.
Yeah, I know you do. I knew you would.
You had to go back like 37 starts to find like 3 top 20s.
That's what I'll do. I'll go back
he was 5th at the 2016 Zurich. I mean, come on, get that
out. In 2013, he had a good stretch where he's really dialed in. It's like I said, this is a tournament. You're going to need that type of putting, and that is a guy. There are a few guys. Peter Malnati is one. Nicholas Lindheim, who I don't know if he's in this tournament or if he's on the tour. There are a couple guys that we know they're fantastic putters. Brian Stewart is a great putter. I'm willing to bank it in this spot, especially, you mentioned Harry Higgs, and I think that's certainly a very fair guy. And Adam, but other than that, you can't tell me who else is down here. That's DJ Trahan. No, that's not the answer.
He was good last week. He's got a 17 attempt there.
But there's just nothing down here. So you're going to have to take a risk. You want to take it with a ball striker who can't putt, which is the more prudent approach. I want to take it with a putter who can't do anything else.
Stewart feels like he should be like 6,300.
Oh, please. Stop it. 6,300. Stewart Sink is 6,300. I have one more guy, and it's again, do I want to do this? No. But did you notice that Braden Thornberry was 6,100?
I honestly didn't even notice that.
Okay, so Braden Thornberry, he's another one of those super talented guys. He's from the South. He's played at St. Jude. That was really where we've seen him. You know, he was fourth at St. Jude in 2017. He was 26th at St. Jude in 2018. He has a handful of other starts on the tour. Not much, made a couple cuts. But man, at 6,100, I did think that was a little kind of ridiculous for a guy that, again, I'm not saying that he's the next big thing, but he's at least shown he can get out there and get in the mix. So if you have to go that low, that would be my guy, because I mean down there's really nobody that you can play.
Yeah, I mean, definitely has that pedigree, but boy, I don't know what happened. I mean, we're looking back, and I just looked this up, so I'm not pretending like I had this off the top of my head. Uh, cut 18th, cut 7th, cut. I mean, that's 6, 7 events on the Corn Ferry Tour. So yeah, a lot of missed cuts. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him, but definitely probably more upside, or at least more pedigree than almost everybody down here, because
it's bad. Except the next big thing, don't play this guy, but Pga Dfs is the new wonder kid. He turned pro at like 17. Now he's just here.
Was he the guy that he played Valspar last year and everybody touted him, kind of like Norman Zhang, and then he was terrible?
I feel like yeah, that's him. Yep. That's literally sums it up nicely. I mean,
where'd he go? Where'd Doug Gim go? He was my guy. If I'm gonna take a shot with somebody cheap,
6,600.
Yeah, 6,600. He was T31 last week. He must have done it with the short game because the ball striking wasn't particularly good. But yeah, I don't know. He seems to get it done. A little like Sung Jae Imi, like it goes back and forth on how he gets it done, but he just kind of manages to kind of linger in every tournament. And yeah, 6,600 seems pretty cheap for the caliber of player he could be.
No, it's amazing. I made a note to talk about him because Chat mentioned him at the beginning of the show, and more power to you and Chat for remembering and me for forgetting. Doug Gim is a guy you talked about kind of with Harry Higgs and some of these others. He was that price last week, and now he's basically the same price. And I don't understand why they're not adjusting to him. He's a good player. We've seen him. He had his little moment in the Masters. I'm not saying that's really pertinent here, but I'll back someone like that over some of these tour players that we've seen for a long period of time that are priced next to him, where it's like, what are we really getting? Like, even if you get them right, you come in 30th. At least Doug Gim, we don't know where his ceiling is just yet.
He's right there with your boy, Bermuda Ben Martin.
So I was on Pat Mayo's show yesterday, and feel free to check that out as well if you want to hear me talk about this again, Chat. And I was joking around, you don't get the nickname Bermuda Benny for nothing. But he reminded me that he's playing if you have his Corn Ferry stats in front of you, he was playing really well towards the end there. I'm not saying that I'm going to him, because I think when you have someone like Doug Gim right there, it's certainly more the prudent play. But Ben Martin is a guy, if he gets healthy, he can stick around on tour. There's no doubt about it.
We're using the term fantastic very, very loosely here with T46, T43, T14, but
I mean, he's been hurt for like crazy. And he got his. Is he on medical?
I don't know, Rob. I don't understand how half of this stuff works. There's guys playing that they haven't done anything in 7 years, and it's like, how is this guy still getting tour starts? I don't know.
Fair enough, but
so we got Glover, Haas,
wow,
Ben Martin. I mean, we can probably make your cash lineup right here.
Just lock it up. Yeah. When I get all these requests from people challenging me to head-to-heads, it means they watch the show. Like I said, you know what? To sum it up, because we got a couple minutes left here. It's Sanderson Farms. The guys are going to feel on the macro level overpriced, and with the new cut rule, it's going to be even that much worse. Where you look at a team and you're just like, but my strategy when we don't know and it's early in the year is take guys that we don't have a body of work on in the lower ranges, and up top, I'm going with more known commodities. Again, in general, but if you're telling me that I can get guys with like Doug Gim and some of these other Corn Ferry dudes, I'm willing to roll with them on the large part just because I think that when they get going, their ceilings are a little bigger for large field tournaments rather than some of these guys that may be more likely to make a cut. But even if they do, how often are they paying you off with a lot of placement points?
Yeah, I mean, in a week where there's a lot of unknowns, and especially early in the season where there's a lot of unknowns, swing for the fences. Try and get a guy that can get you a win or a top 5 or a top 10 based on their price, rather than, like you said, just taking David Hearn and locking in your T47. It's like, yeah, it's all a crapshoot. So like, take some guys. If you're taking shots, take shots with guys that have upside, guys that can go low, and not, your terrible players that you know exactly what you're getting from, which is nothing.
That's right. You mentioned Austin Cook. I made two outright bets this week. One was Aaron Wise and one was probably a donkey move. Everyone bet Scotty Scheffler, but I did too. Did you bet anyone besides Austin Cook?
No, just Austin Cook right now. I should probably bet Scheffler. I get really sad on Sunday evenings when everybody's tweeting their betting cards and pictures of their
I hit my double. Everyone's just going to have a double this week with Wentworth.
I mean, yeah, when you double 35 guys here into 35 guys there, yeah, you're going to hit once in a while. But
that's, so they say. I wouldn't know about that. Like I said, I can't play doubles because I can't even hit singles. Like how am I going to?
Yeah, let's start with one winner first, and then we'll try with two winners.
Seriously, but as I said before, Chad, my DFS article will be up. My betting article will be posted, and tomorrow night, the routine. Me and Jason Roslin will be breaking this down, lineup construction, Q&A. There could be a little weather. I've seen some reports that there may be a slight split, and we'll dig into what that means for all this because you're going to want to correlate those lineups possibly, especially if you're making a ton of them. But any other thoughts on the Sanderson Farms before we get back to reality?
No, I mean, it's weird. The guys at the top feel overpriced, but as you go down in the pricing, it's strange. It almost seems like the guys up top are overpriced, and then you go down and the guys in the middle and lower tier are really kind of appropriately priced. So I feel like I've been kind of plugging in the value guys I like, and then I don't have a real strong feel at the top, which seems kind of scary, but it's almost like I plug in the value guys I like and then work that way.
Backwards. No, there's merit to that.
Almost like college football, right? It's like you have all these studs at the top, and it's like, yeah, we plug in the value, and then we see, what 9K players we want to plug in.
It's true. I do think that that's underutilized in the sense that a lot of people, especially if you build, optimizers notwithstanding, they click in from the top down and then they scroll and they click the next name and they scroll. You want to make sure you're not pigeonholing yourself by mistake. College football, yeah, we'll be sweating Chuba Hubbard. How good is he, by the way? I was first to him.
You were. I was touting Justice Hill all last year, and you were touting Chuba.
But
again, I was wrong. I was on the wrong end of that split.
Yeah, I got to take my few victory laps when I can get them. But we're going to get out of here. Chat, as I say, each and every Tuesday, we really do appreciate it. It makes the show that much more fun with you guys hanging out with us. If you want to click the like button on your way out, we'd appreciate it. Find us on Twitter. Follow Tim. You can follow me too. That'd be great. But he's a much better Twitter follower than I am. And we're going to get out of here. There's plenty of shows coming up on the Awesemo Network. So I hope you'll stick with us. And again, I'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. for another show brought to you by Fantasydraft. Want to say thanks to them. So we'll get out of here. Good luck, everyone. And we'll be back next week.